fellas, let's go. Here we go. Big play. Trips open right, 334 stretch, Z post, X stop, on two. Ready?
This is my dad's show.
It's called the Quarterback Dadcast.
Hey everybody, it's Casey Jaycox with the Quarterback Dadcast. I want to say thanks to all of our listeners, thanks to all of our sponsors for all your support. We are continuing to enjoy this journey together, inspiring dads, but I want to take a minute now to talk about Acme Homes. You've heard me talk about them before, but I'm going to talk about them again. Bob Cumming, former college teammate, amazing leader, amazing home builder. They continue to take so much pride in the work they do, the craftsmanship, the attention to detail. Whether you're looking for a home up in Monroe, up in Sultan, up in Wenatchee, this is where they're doing their amazing things. So many people during the pandemic, as we have the ability to work from home, have decided to move out of the city to try to find homes where there's more acreage. Well, that's exactly what Bob and team at Acme Homes give you. So check out Valley Vista up in Monroe. Check out Daisy Meadows out in Sultan. And if you want to even go to Eastern Washington, check out Sienna Heights in Wenatchee. They're, again, amazing craftsmanship, amazing floor plans. You can visit them at acmehomeswa.com. And if you're interested in learning specifically about listings or mortgage opportunities, contact Jen at 425-308-8082 or Denise at 425-309-2318. So now, why are we doing a new ad? Because we want to talk about a partnership they have with Portage Bank. Kevin Jensen is one of the great lenders over there. He's the senior vice president. He's going to take care of you. And right now, if you obtain a mortgage through Portage Bank, Bob and team at Acme Homes are going to pay your $500 appraisal fee. I said that right. They're going to pay your $500 appraisal fee by buying a home through them, getting your mortgage through the folks at Portage Bank. So don't wait. Now's the time to contact Jen, contact Denise. Again, Jen's number is 425-308-8082. And again, Denise is at 425-309-2318. Visit acmehomeswa.com right now. Don't wait. Thank you again for listening to the Quarterback Dadcast. So with that, let's get right to today's episode. Well, hey everybody, it's Casey Jaycox with the Quarterback Dadcast. And today, I think every time I say this, I'm excited because I truly am. I get the chance to talk to so many cool and unique people across the wide world internet, wide world web. I think we call it the triple dub. And today, a huge shout out goes to Jessica Ashcroft and Doug Leby. This next guest is an esteemed colleague of them, and his name is Craig Coe, and he's the SVP of Relationship Management at a very successful software company called Beeline that serves many different customers, specifically within the talent acquisition space. But as much as that sounds great, we're not here to talk to Doug about that stuff. We're to Craig about that stuff. We're going to talk to Craig about life as a dad and how he grew up, how his parents shaped him, and learn about how he is always working to become that ultimate quarterback of his household. So without further ado, Mr. Craig Coe, welcome to the Quarterback Dadcast.
Oh boy, I'll tell you what, it's an honor to be here. I think back at some of the guests you've had and certainly, the guests you even had just today, and just to be included in that and being part of this conversation is an honor. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you bet. Well, it's going to be fun. Like I said, huge shout out to your esteemed leader, Douglas Leby, for making this happen.
Yes, Mr. Leby.
Well, in true QB Dadcast fashion, we always start out with, what are you most grateful for as a father today?
Wow, that's a deep question. I think as a father, I am incredibly grateful that I have had the ability to participate in the raising of two really incredible kids that are now 26, soon to be 27, that are, contributing members to society that I believe have the right moral compass, have been successful through, in various stages of their lives, whether it was, through athletics or academics. Both have been able to graduate college with their MBAs. So the fact that I have those two incredible children that I really consider very close friends now is probably the greatest gift I have.
It's cool. You're making me get butterflies. I can't wait to experience that stage, but I'm not going to let time keep going fast. I'm going to slow it down because I know my kids will be 26 and 27 before I know it. For me, I'm grateful for, you always hope you're doing the right things. You always hope sometimes as parents, we second guess ourselves and what decision we make. But I was playing golf yesterday, late afternoon, with a buddy of mine, and he said, "Hey man, I saw Ryder yesterday or a few days ago at the club." And I'm like, "Oh, cool." He said, "What a stud." He shook my hand, looked in the eye, and he was asked questions and was like had just a great conversation with him. And I was like, "Man, that is like you made my day." So like I'm grateful for those little moments that that I put tons of value on, because
Mm-hmm.
whether you get a B minus or C plus in math, sure, it matters. But in the end, like, be a good person and be someone that people can interact with and build relationships with. And so that I'm grateful for my friend Steve, who shared that with me about my son Ryder. So I
Yeah,
will share.
it's so funny you say that. One of the things we talked to our kids about a lot when they were younger was if you're doing something, take a pause, take a minute to look around and examine your actions, and are they negatively affecting someone? And if they are, pause and recognize that, hey, maybe you need to pivot a little bit. And I think that goes back to exactly that, right? Recognizing situational awareness and being respectful and just understanding that your actions aren't just yours, they impact others. And just that little simple thing of shaking someone's hand and looking them in the eye. And not only did that impact that person and show them the respect, but look what it brought back to you, right? The pride that you've done something and really impacted, driven something home to your son. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's fun. Well, I wrote down, I mean, I'm already taking notes. Hopefully everybody else listening at home right now as well. But situational awareness is a great action item out of me out of this episode. But like talking to my kids, don't tell them, but use my friend Ted, which you know all about. But like, hey, Ryder, tell me about the word situational awareness. When you think about tell me what comes to mind, and just see what kind of conversation I can inspire from that. Um,
Yeah.
so, okay. So you talk a little bit. You got two kids. Maybe talk about what life looks like in your home. Talk about what does a day in the life look like, and maybe share a little bit about what your kids are doing now.
Yeah, happy to do that. I mean, empty nesters, right? So it's and that's really in itself a big change when they go off to college, they graduate from college, and it becomes okay, what are you going to be when you grow up? And I think we all still experience that throughout our lives. But right now, the day in the life is really tracking down and making sure we connect with the kids on a daily basis. My son lives in Atlanta, right out of college, had a job, moved to Atlanta the week, I think 2 days after he got his diploma. We packed him up out of the frat house and drove him to Atlanta. And he's been there ever since. And so watching, connecting with him and in his job and in his personal life and what's going on there. And then with my daughter, she's recently purchased a house. So she'd sold something. So she's been living in an apartment above our garage and heading now to Jack's. So this weekend's activities are getting her settled in her new house. So a lot of chaos right now around my house with furniture being staged and clothes and all those things. So in some ways, it's the same chaos of having a family unit all together, but it's also the joys of seeing what they're becoming and what's next,
Mm-hmm.
and enjoying that with them, enjoying that ride.
Explain the journey of becoming an empty nester. How is that?
Shocking when both go away at the same time. I will, it's much different when I guess if I've got many friends with multiple children, and when the first one goes, it's hard, but you've got that second one to kind of hang on to and maybe pull a little bit closer because when they go off to college or when they're gone, that protection factor is gone from us, right? That I want to always be there. I want to be there to provide that cocoon. I hate to say that because it
Yeah,
insinuates I'm a helicopter parent, but you worry, right? I mean,
totally.
the minute they're born, the worry just begins, and you're so the journey was really for us shocking. Uh, my son Camden was 7.5 hours away at Auburn University, so it wasn't as though either one of us could get in a car and connect if he was going through a personal struggle. I mean, he was out on his own and really didn't know anyone there, but loved the campus. And my daughter was an athlete, so she immediately became part of a team and had friends. And but she was only 3.5 hours away, so a little bit closer. And weekends were easy if she wanted to come for the weekend. So for us, it was a shocker. I think we spent a lot of time making sure that we became visible and met them where they were. So it was easy for us to get and come to see them on a weekend, or with Lauren and her golf, make sure that we participated in her events and walked and supported and those kinds of things. So I found that we had a lot of gaps in our schedule as when they were younger. Athletics, as you know, can consume so much. And for us, it was about, Camden had hockey and Lauren had golf, and it was just that was our lives. And when they left, we became husband and wife again versus mom and dad, right? As
Mm-hmm.
as we've been for the last, let's call it 18 years when they were born.
Wow. Wow. What our mom and dad, are you guys like hitting the nightlife scene? You got leather pants in Miami and you're just like single again?
Oh, it's funny. You see that in the movies, and that is certainly not. You know, I think what it did for us was allowed us to become husband and wife again. Because as a parent, and you know this all too well, the your identity shifts, and you certainly don't deprioritize one or the other, but the kids become the center of everything you do. And so when they left, it was good for us to hit that pause button and just become husband and wife again. Uh, Not that the kids weren't necessarily still center of that, but it allowed us to, uh, you know, do things that we wanted to do, or go play golf together as a couple, or do other couple things. As when we had the kids in the house, it was even when we traveled, our anniversary always landed within spring break. So they went with us everywhere. And that was just life. That's what we did. And we loved it because we're a family. So it's been interesting. I find that we probably go to bed way too early. I mean, I feel like sometimes we're old, but I think we lost a lot of sleep as parents, and we
Sure.
still do.
Well, I feel like I tend to be a warrior at times, sometimes to maybe if to a fault, but because you do it out of love and you care, but you got to let them go. And um, it's going to be, I don't know, I'm going to be a mess when like my kids are out. Like I might come for you hire you as my life coach. Help me through this thing. um, well, I want to go back. You mentioned you've listened to a few episodes, so you probably know this question. I'm always intrigued by it, is, talk about, Craig, how your parents shaped you. Like, talk about what was life growing up like for you, what did that look like, and then maybe share some lessons that your parents shared with you that helped impact the way you raise your kids.
Yeah, that's a heck of a question. So I'll preface it by saying I never met my dad, my father. So growing up, my mother was the central piece of everything we had. So I had one older brother, 2 years older than me. In every stage, he was, quite. He was my hero in many ways, right? He was a tremendous athlete, uh, a tremendous physical specimen. I mean, he always had, low body fat, just a strong guy, and so that was, competing with him my whole life growing up, and having my mother, that was the rock. And seeing the things she went through to raise two, very, growing, hungry, just guys that needed things. She did what she had to do. So for me, when I think about, just the various stages in life, whether I was going through athletics, and if she was there, um, every football game, every baseball game, soccer, it just, in spite of how difficult that was for her to do, she was there. And I, she was married, I think 2.5, 3 years and I was part of a military family. We spent time over in Japan, which was an incredible experience in my life as a much younger man. I was 9, 10, 11 years old. So when I would talk about any father figure that I had as a youth, that would be him for let's call it the 3 years that he was part of my life. So for the most part, growing up, there wasn't this father figure that I could look to give me guidance. It was more about I kind of had to figure it out on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew growing up that was the one thing that was going to be different for me was I didn't have all the answers, right? Because I didn't get anything growing up to give me the guide. But by golly, I knew one thing, I was going to be there. And I remembered what it felt like to look up in the stands and have my mom there. And I was for sure going to make sure that my kids knew, no matter what I had to do on my job, that I was there. So for me, growing up as an athlete, those were the things that I remembered. I had to figure it out on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it was a coach helping me, teaching me how to tie a tie, because I didn't have that, or girls, right? You don't want to talk to your mom about uh, girls, right? So those were the things that you lack, right? And so for me, it was just I wouldn't trade anything about it because it made me who I am, and it made me, I think, very resourceful, and gave me that drive that if I wanted something, I was just going to have to go fight for it, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the way it was going to be because I saw that's what my mother had to do.
Mm-hmm. What if you can remember, like tell me how old were you when you realized, shoot, I don't have a dad?
When I started, it was probably you're young, probably kindergarten area time frame when you're really starting to make friends, and we moved a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, I it was probably after my mother got divorced, to to the guy that I would call it, like I said, the dad that I had for a few years, and we moved back to the States. And you start in school, and you're meeting your friends, and you're meeting their parents, and you realize, bring your dad to school, right? Or what does your dad do? And it's like, sometimes that's an awkward question because the answer could be, well, my mom's divorced, or the real answer was, I don't know, I never met him.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was a little awkward. But again, thinking about my mother and the things she did and the close unit that we had between the three of us, my brother and I and my mother, it didn't necessarily affect me, at least that I was aware of as a young man, that I didn't have that figure. It just, to me, that was life.
Yeah. Did your brother, do you feel like he acted like a pseudo dad, like that, even though a big brother, but like a little bit of that dad figure for you?
Um, I think in some areas, yes, and in some areas, no. I mean, when we always joked, and I'll say this kind of tongue in cheek. I mean, he was always a great athlete, a big physical specimen, but when it came down to that protection element, I was always, if someone was going to say something to my brother, I was going to be that guy that got in your face. So in those areas, I kind of became, that almost the protector of the family, if you will, in many ways. And I'm kind of embarrassed to say that, but that's just kind of the way it became. But I do think that there were areas where there were things he experienced in advance of me that I was able to witness. And I was able to say, yeah, I don't want to go through that. Or, how did he get there? Or, you know, ask him, Mark, what would you have done different there, or how can I avoid that, or what did you do that, because that really worked. You got to talk to that really pretty girl that I would love to be able to talk to, and I'm too doggone shy, right? So there were things like that that I think he did help me on along the way.
Well, I'm curious. What intrigues me about stories like yours, Craig, is too often you hear about a man growing up without a father and all the negative potential perceived impacts, which obviously they're in the ideal world you want support at the home. But what I love about your story is, I think there's two or three other folks I've interviewed become buddies of mine. Well, buddies of mine before, but still friends. Is you'd never know it. They're the most well-spoken, gritty, resilient. I mean, they didn't use it as a negative to keep them down. They just kind of like exactly what you said. You wanted to give your kids what you didn't have. It's that inspiring thing. So I think I love your mindset there. Any idea where that came from? Is it innate, or do you think it came from your mom? Or
The one thing I can say about my mom is nothing got in her way, and she would. Uh, I read a book a few years ago, and I think just the title in itself really helped her, which is "The Obstacle's the Way."
great
Right.
book.
So, yeah, it's a great book, and I think about her. She wasn't college educated, and people weren't opening doors for her as a single mother. She just fought her way to find the way to make sure that we had what we needed. We had a roof over our head. We had shoes on our feet. And we had the food that we wanted. Now, we didn't have lavish vacations and you know these incredible material Christmas things that we hear about today. But the reality was what we had was what we needed. And for me, she just always instilled, if that's what you want, then you got to go fight for it, because nobody's going to give it to you. And that's just what we did. And one of the things that as a kid, I was absolutely committed to was I was never going to let my circumstance dictate how I was going to grow up and how I was going to be as a man. And I, to this day, I refuse to allow that to define me. I get questions all the time. Don't you want to know who he was or what he? And I'm just, no, I am good. What's important to me is that the people that I interact with, and my kids and my wife and my very small circle of friends, they know who I am, and they understand who I am, and they trust me. At the end of the day, I once had a guy say about me, he said, if Craig tells you the hog weighs 100 pounds, you load it in the truck. And on the surface, people go, oh, well, that's just some Southern term. But to me, that means if that guy tells you it is, then it is.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not, he's going to make it right. And for me, that's all I got at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I just believe that my circumstances, while they help define me, they are not going to hold me back.
I love that. How much of that, what you just shared, have you shared with your kids, and to instill that mindset?
A ton. I think, my golf is a funny sport, and this, and your son's playing, and you can be a victim of some really tough circumstances in any round of golf. It could be a really bad bounce. It can be someone screaming in your backswing. It can be one of a million things. But the reality is, it's just an event, and you just overcome it, and you just put it behind you, because it doesn't define who you are. Or you could have a particularly bad round of golf, and while it's impactful and it hurts, it doesn't define who you are. And so when I think about Lauren, those were the things that I really tried to drive home with her was, you got to put those things behind you. And the same with my son. He played football. He went to a small middle school. They had middle school and high school. And when he was in middle school as an eighth grader, they asked him to come play center for the high school team.
Wow.
Now, he was a decent sized kid, but could snap the ball. They were, played shotgun a lot, and he could snap the ball. And it was tough. He's going against juniors and seniors in high school, and they were beating on him. And it's like he would come home and, Dad, this is hard. And I said, it is hard. And you're part of a team, and being part of a team means you're going to do some of the hard things, but you're going to carry through on your commitment, which was you join this team, you're committed to this team, you're committed to making sure that you do your part to make them successful. And so for me, those were all of those lessons of it's just an obstacle, and you can choose to let it define you, or you can choose to find your way past it. And the people that find their way past it are the ones that are truly successful in life. And that isn't necessarily monetary. It's successful in relationships because they're hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's successful in really anything you do, in friendships, whether it's relationships with your wife or your friends. They're hard. They're work. Mm-hmm. And if you're not committed to overcoming obstacles, then it's going to be a long road.
Yeah, it's easy. You're right. Golf is, of anybody who's listening plays golf. One of my friends, Darren Ballmores, shout out to D. He was on episode, I think 8 or 9. He said 3 words: golf is hard. He's a 0. And it just, when I tell my son that, like, when things aren't going my way or his way, I'm like, hey, what 3 words are we going to remember? He's like, I know, Dad, golf's hard. It's a hard game. And I think that is such a good reminder for not only for dads or moms, whoever's listening, about golf, but anything, whether it's theater, trumpet, flute, grades. It does not, the outcome does not define you. It's about the process, the journey of growth. And there's a great coach, Tony Bennett, who is at, I think, Virginia, previously at Washington State. And I'm paraphrasing this quote, but he said that essentially adversity is life's golden ticket. And so when bad stuff happens, what do? Do we become victim? Do we blame, which is a complete waste of time? Or like mm-hmm. Russell Wilson talks, we talk about limitless minds. We stay neutral in our thought to kind of realize, okay, where am I at? Where do I want to go? Don't let this negative outcome affect me, but let's focus on quickly getting back on track, because that's all we can do. In golf, as Lauren probably knows, you're only as good as your last shot.
That she does. But
remind me, she needs to give me like 10 strokes if we ever play. So
we played over the weekend, and much like she did the first time when she beat me at 13 years old, she gave me a pretty good drumming this one. It's quite humbling to see your daughter play you from the same tees, and you lay into a tee shot, and you look at her and say, okay, come get one. And sure she can. She knocks it 10 yards past me, 15 yards past me. And I'm like, by golly, I don't know what I got to do.
It's probably an illegal golf ball. I'd get it tested, Craig. Okay, so talk about so that journey of seeing your kids go through sports, and I've talked about this to other dads about kind of the ups and downs of youth sports parent, knowing that you've gone through it. Tell me some things that worked for you, and maybe describe 1 or 2 things you would have done differently now that you're in this phase of life.
So I think the biggest lesson I learned, and I learned this with Lauren in particular, is it's really hard to coach your kids. It's hard to coach your kids because oftentimes our ego gets in the way, and we think we're better than we are. We think that we have the ability to kind of coach past some of our inabilities. And like with Lauren, she quickly became, far better than I had the ability to coach. Yet there were these scenarios where it was, she wanted me to be there. She would ask me, can you help me with this? What's wrong? And I quickly came to the realization that I couldn't solve that. I could fundamentally tell her grip, stance, shoulders, let's get the angles right. But beyond that, it was out of my skill set. When I think about my son, that journey was more difficult, because with my son, it became,
Hey everybody, it's Casey Jaycox. I want to take a quick break to talk about my friends up at Catch Sitka Seafoods who continue to be just an amazing loyal sponsor. And for those of you who've tried it, thank you. For those of you who haven't, you're missing out. And now's the time to make sure that you visit catchsitkaseafoods.com and get some of those amazing smoked salmon. Get some of that amazing rockfish, blackfish, black cod, salmon, whatever it might be, whatever you like. But what's great about opportunities they have, now's the time to subscribe to a box so that you're going to get that reliable cadence of the best fish directly from the dock to the doorstep. And what's great about Catch Sitka Seafoods, they make it so easy. So those that maybe aren't the best chefs at home, who doesn't matter. They're going to give you this beautiful, nice laminated recipe card that tells you exactly how long to cook it, whether you're going to barbecue, you're going to bake, you're going to fry, whatever the way you want to do it, they're going to make it easy. So please visit them today, catchsitkaseafoods.com. Sign up for a subscription so that you're going to get the best fish delivered directly to your door. You won't regret it. And just like my daughter Riley says, Dad, I don't even like fish. And she does now because of my friends up at Catch Sitka Seafood. So with that, let's get right back to today's episode.
Not so much the skills, because we could talk about hockey, which was the sport he was most passionate about, but it was more about managing the emotions within a game and staying within his role and knowing what his role on that team was. And for him, his role on the team was not necessarily to be the leading scorer on the team. He wasn't the most skilled. He wasn't the fastest. He wasn't the best skater. But what he was a really good leader. And that's what that team needed. And so for him, it was to play the tough minutes, to play in front of the goal, to get, you call them sometimes the garbage goals, the dirty goals, to get on that corner and just grind things out. And so for him, the times when he didn't feel like he got enough playing time, or he didn't feel like he was contributing to the team, it was, let's focus on what the role is and the things you can do. And I'll tell you a great story that for me, I think when the light went on for him, we were at nationals in high school. They had won the state championship that year, and we were playing arguably the best team in the country. And we were down 2-0 after the second period, and the team went into the locker room as they were doing the Zamboni on the ice. And within 2 to 3 minutes, the coach came out of the locker room, and he looked at me, and I said, "Coach, what's going on?" And he said, "Your son's in there, and the team is in tears. He is just letting them have it." Now, not in an ugly way, but in a, what are we doing? And who's going to step up and who's going to own? And to see what that team did coming out and playing the third period, tying it up and going to overtime was amazing. Now, they didn't eventually win that game, but to watch him come out and say, "I'm not going back in there." And to me, that for me was probably one of the proudest moments, because I knew what was going on in there. And to hear some of the kids, and I still talk to some of those kids today, and just, those are the things you remember.
Yep. How often do you and your son talk about that moment?
We joke about it. I would say a couple of times a year we joke about that. We talk about, because right here to my left in my office, I have that team picture, and I look at it every day. And so I'm always remembered. I'm reminded of that game and of that time. And for him to wear, again, I think about that team. He wore the A, which for a third line guy, that doesn't happen very often. Those are usually the best skaters, the highest scorers, those people that the team look up to. But here's a guy that didn't have a lot of playing time, but was a great leader, and the team looked to him for guidance. And to me, just incredible. That every time I think about that, and he doesn't understand the impact, but I do. And it brings a tear to my eye.
Oh, I love it. He will when he becomes a dad. He will when he becomes a dad. And maybe for the non-hockey fan, that A was not the scarlet letter, correct?
That is correct. That's correct. That's it. That's an assistant captain. That's right.
Want to make sure we keep the non-hockey fan engaged here, sarcastically speaking. So, as you think about back to kind of all the lessons you learned, which from your mom and growing up, and which I mean, getting to know you, this is like our third or fourth time we spoke now, and it's a lot of this stuff makes sense of the success you've had in your business life because of the same kind of thing: gritty, resilient, think on your feet, got to fight for what you want. I mean, customers aren't just going to hand you a deal. You got to go earn it. You got to create value by asking great questions. You got to understand their problem. So maybe talk a little bit about the impact you're growing up kind of shaped you as the dad, the business leader.
Oh boy, that's great. I mean, so when I think about the leaders that I had growing up, obviously my mom was an incredible example of that, and my coaches were probably the most influential as a young man in being those leaders that I had to look up to. And there are a few of those coaches that I can think back on my time, that made impacts on me. And some were positive and some were negative. And when I think back, especially one that I think really defined me was going into my junior year. A new position coach came in, and I was a linebacker. I played Mike linebacker, and I wasn't the biggest guy. But back in, I'm a graduate at 85, so kind of sets my age a little bit. I was a couple 100 pounds, 5'10". I was solid, and I was a good middle linebacker. But I came in, and he immediately judged me as, you're not big enough. You can't play middle linebacker. So he made a decision to move somebody that was less athletic but bigger and put him in the middle. And that experiment failed pretty quickly. And I got my opportunity to get that job back. But it was never an opportunity for me to even play for it. So that immediately made me recognize that I cannot judge someone at all based on what I see on paper or what I see visually or based on a single event. People need to be coached. People deserve to be coached, and people deserve the opportunity to prove themselves. And so for me, that was a very lasting impact for me, and it's one that I won't forget. The others, I have many coaches that taught me early on. You see in sports today, there's a lot of showboating and pounding of your chest, and you make a big hit, you got to get up and take your helmet off. And I had a coach pull me off the field, and when I was a sophomore in high school, and he pulled me off the field, the defense coordinator, and said, yeah, "You're not going to act like that on my field." I was beating my chest that I made this tackle for a loss, and it taught me really quickly that humility and being humble and making a tackle for loss is what you expect of me. I didn't do anything great. I did what you expect me to do. And so those are the things that kind of shaped me and into my career, recognizing that in many things, everything you do is about doing what's expected and more, and then being a part of a team. And being a part of a team is greater than just me. And that's what that one coach taught me is you're 11 guys out on the field, but there's 50 people on this sideline that you represent when you act that way, plus your coaches. And you're just not going to do that. So those are the things for me that kind of stood out.
I love that. You actually made me think of a story when my son was got to been 7 or 8. We played flag football. I was one of the coaches, offensive coach. My buddy Kyle was a defensive coach, and he was a diehard Giants fan. Remember Victor Cruz?
Oh yeah,
we do the salsa dance.
Receiver. Yeah.
So my buddy, they were big Giants fans. We're obviously Seahawks fans, where we are, and my son Ryder catches a pass for a touchdown, spikes it, and starts doing the salsa dance in the end zone, flag football, like an 8-year-old. And I mean, 1% of me thought that was, oh my God, that's pretty funny. An 8-year-old, and he didn't know. Quickly, I said, I pulled my son over. I said, "Hey, bud, heck of a catch, like at your age. 2, if you ever do that dance again, you won't play for this team." And we don't, that's not what we do. I know you thought that was, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. You're 8 years old, 9 years old. You didn't know, but when you score, you hand the ball to the ref and you get back to the sideline, you get back to the huddle. But we still sometimes will joke about it today, like the fact of it. I mean, just visualizing an 8-year-old doing the,
That's look, it's funny to chuckle about, right? I totally get it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the moment, I mean, we are what we allow. If I'd allowed that, then, this sometimes, yeah, let's chill out. But I think little things like that, those are teaching moments. If you let them go, it leads to the next lackadaisical thing where I get lazy or complacent. And then next thing you know, I'm like, he's all right. He's not that bad of a kid.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And I agree, though it's even in life as adults, we still do that. My, if I see something that I think, hey, I may not have done it that way. I mean, it's an opportunity for me to ask, well, take a look back and what the outcome was, and would you have done something a little different there, whether it's my daughter or my son, in every day in life, and I can share with them. Lord knows I have made more than my fair share of mistakes, and I am more than willing to share those failures so that they don't have to. And they're more than happy to listen to some of those, but obviously there's others where they're like, okay, Dad, I know.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's so important, and you're hitting on something else that I'm really passionate about, which is I think humility plus vulnerability equals leadership. I think we as dads can keep ourselves humble, keep our environment humble when we're vulnerable enough, like you just shared, to share your own gaps, your own mess. Because I think our kids sometimes they see, oh, it must be he's just my mom or my dad, and their life's great. And like, listen, guy, I love sharing mistakes. I love sharing failure. I love. Well, I applied for a TED Talk 2 years ago, didn't get selected. Don't know why, but doesn't matter. The fact is, I said, well, I was kind of bummed but obviously it wasn't the right time. Maybe I wasn't ready for it yet, whatever reason. But I loved sharing that with my kids. Like, hey, I tried. I didn't get picked. And I got two choices. I can either blame them, say these guys are idiots, they don't know what they're talking about, or I'm like, man, what a great opportunity for me to really figure out what either my message didn't speak to somebody, maybe it was the wrong event, whatever the reason may be. But like when we can share those moments with our kids, I think it helps just create a normalcy that they're going to have gaps, they're going to have bumps in the road, but it's what you do with them. Kind of like the story you said earlier in our conversation.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the term vulnerable, and I think that's been one of those things that I've had to really focus on. It's growing up without a dad, right? And as I stated early on, you just kind of say, you know what, I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do whatever I got to do to get there, right? The obstacle's the way again, and so it is hard sometimes for me to move away from that, tough father. You can twist my arm off, and I'm going to be okay. Versus, that gutted me, or that hurt, that statement, or seeing something within athletics or in life that really cuts you to the core, and right, and allowing that emotion to come out. And I'm not great at that, and it's something that I've tried to, at least with my son, know that that's okay to be, vulnerable, and that you can let your emotion show. And it's funny. I'll tell you a story. I wasn't always, you know, I made the assumption my kids knew I loved them every day, and I would kiss them and hug them, especially as young kids, and I love you. But as they get older, it's less comfortable, for them, right? You can't, hey, I love you in front of their friends, or hug them in front of their friends. And I was with another one of his close friends as he was growing up in middle school, and his dad, who I really respected and liked, just openly would say, son, I love you, in front of all the friends, and give him a hug and kiss him. And it just, I was like, wow, man, that is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, when I would wait, and after a football game, this, was in that age group, I would wait for him on the sideline, and the first place he would come after a game, he would come over and I would hug him. and I would tell him I love him. And we wouldn't talk about the game. I would just tell him I was proud of him. And I do the same with my daughter. After every competitive round, I would meet her, and I didn't care what the score was. I just wanted her to know that no matter what, I was proud of her and I loved her. And I think about it now when we talk to each other on the phone or we see each other. It's telling each other we love each other is it's just part of our native language now. And I think people people use it, uh, love you, bro, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really important when you impart that I actually I love you,
Mm-hmm.
and that means I would do anything for you. And
Mm-hmm.
um, to me, that's a big deal. For me, that's being vulnerable. For me,
Mm-hmm.
is it's about as vulnerable as I could be, is saying, "Hey, I love you, and I don't expect anything back. But I want you to know how I feel."
Yeah, that's awesome. I think generationally, I think even probably for you or even folks older than you, they didn't see that a lot with dads, like whatever reason why. And I remember, my dad wasn't a ton of that, wasn't like negative, but I remember saying, kind of like you said, I want to give my kids something that I didn't have. And I sometimes talking about the emotions growing up wasn't always comfortable, but now I strive for that. I like make myself get in those moments of at times quote unquote uncomfortable, whether it is or isn't, but just forcing my kids to know that this is normal. Like we're family and you can talk about I love yous. And, and I think it's so important too that you go to that before the outcome of any event, because too often I think our kids, like, my son recently had two of his worst rounds. And then like within 2 weeks, two of his best rounds. I'm like, same kid, doesn't matter. Right. But same thing, whether my daughter made a big shot or missed a big shot. I think it's such a good reminder for me to hear from you, Craig, and for people at home, if you're listening, like it's a reminder. Is like, what is our end game for our kids we want? Like, it's not like we're going to remember a random shot or putt on some podunk golf course in Atlanta, Georgia. It's that they're a great person. They're going to be a great person in society, and they know that their mom or dad loves them. Like that to me is like so powerful. So I appreciate you sharing it. As we think about your journey, I always like to ask dads, what's an area? I know you said vulnerability, maybe opening up emotions, but like, what would be an area that other maybe younger dads who are right in the thick of this, that are going through raising kids, that they can learn from maybe one of your gaps that you focused on, and maybe what would be some advice, some actionable advice based on kind of the conversation we've had today that will allow them to become a better leader of their home, in your opinion?
I think it's okay to recognize that you don't have the answers. I think it's okay to understand that raising kids, being part of, being married, um, and all the things that go along with it, it's hard. Um, they're going to test you, they're going to push you, and there is no easy button. But the most important thing you can do is be there. And the hardest thing for me to really to grasp was being present, because for me, most of my career I traveled 40 plus weeks a year, and it became really noticeable if I was home and not present. If I was on my phone, or answering emails or any of that, it became very noticeable. So I would say be okay with not having the answer and working through it together.
Mm-hmm.
And your kids will appreciate that, and your spouse will appreciate that. And also find time to be present. And it's an unrealistic expectation to expect that every moment that you're together on a weekend that you're present, especially in today's society. But make it a point to be present. And for me, that was making sure I made every effort to be home to watch my daughter's golf on Thursday nights when she was in high school, or go to those tournaments on the weekends and walk every hole and be there and not be on my phone. It meant to go to practices on Friday afternoons Friday nights for the games and the practices on the weekends. Just be present and be a part of what they love. It isn't what you love, it's what they love, and be part of that.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's so often you hear stories about it, parents, living vicariously through their kids or trying to be someone they're not. And one thing, I was talking to somebody yesterday that, both of my kids, I was talking to my buddy last night, but both of my kids' best sport is a sport that I didn't play growing up. I was all the sports, but I was average at hoops and average at baseball, but I got good enough at football to play in college. Where I was an average golfer in high school. My son's he's quickly becoming his sport. He's realized that, he's going to hang up the cleats in basketball. My daughter is a hooper. I wasn't a hooper, but she's feisty point guard. And I love that I can't live vicariously through them because they're doing things I never did, and it makes it fun to let them and remind them, hey, this is your journey. This is what you are going to do. Dad already played in college. Dad already did his thing. This is about you. And my job is to help you carve you the path, help you get to what you want to do. But you got to keep me posted on what's important to you. Okay. So last question before we get into some lightning round stuff. As you think back of your parenting journey, and obviously people say, it goes fast, enjoy every moment, all the cliches, which are true. I mean, I still can't believe I have a high school sophomore, almost junior in high school. Like, what the hell? How did that happen? Is there anything you would have done differently now that you've been through it?
Oh, I'm sure there's countless things. I think the one thing I'm constantly reminded of was the different measures of which you hold your daughter and your son. And what I mean by that is, you're very protective of your daughter, primarily because we were young males at one time in our lives. And so I was probably overly protective in that element, and kind of imparted that on my son in areas. And I'll tell you a really funny story. They were in middle school, and it was their first middle school dance. And the instructions to my son were, nobody dances with my baby girl. And sure enough, she came home and was extremely unhappy because because my son was larger than his age group. And so nobody danced with my daughter. And so, okay, that was mistake number one. And then it became, it's okay. They can dance, but nothing slow, right? And so it became this journey for me to recognize that I have to let her experience that journey within the boundaries that I could get comfortable with. And so, and I even joke today that, look, my daughter's 26, she'll be 27 in January, and I still live in the princess, unicorns, kind of world of how I view my daughter, right? And it's just, I know that sounds silly, but I think that's the hard part, right? Is recognize that they've got to experience that journey, and there's going to be some heartache. And just because you were how you were at a young man doesn't mean that every young man that comes knocking at the door, is a bad guy. Mm-hmm. And I chose to be the tough, mean dad and not give them not a lot of rope early on.
Well, when you move her in this weekend, just install cameras and mics, make yourself feel better.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know that sounds silly, but
no, I think it's normal, man. And I appreciate the honesty. It's like, shoot, I'm not looking forward to seeing a guy kiss my daughter. I'm like, what in the hell? What are you doing, dude?
Yeah.
But I kissed my wife, and it's like, I remember, my wife and I've dated since like 8th grade. So,
Wow.
I'm 45 now. So it's a long time, 30 something years. So, kudos to my in-laws and, for letting us grow up together a little bit. Um, okay. So now, so real quick. So I always like to end episodes with, actionable advice. So you said, be present. You don't have to have all the answers. Be vulnerable. Say I love you. Anything else that comes to mind before we go into the crazy lightning round?
Character is everything. And teach your kids that.
Okay.
Teach their kids that um, people will, and this is a way overused saying, but it's one that I believe in. People will forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And and there's so much embedded in character. And I'll leave you with this story. I remember watching Lauren in a pretty important junior tournament, and it was a AJGA. I think it was one of the championships, and it was at TPC Sawgrass. And one of the girls she was playing with was having a particularly bad round and started to break down. Now, the other competitor wanted no part of it and, became visibly frustrated. Lauren hugged that girl and said, it's going to be okay. And really kind of, I suspect, said, this round doesn't define you, and it won't. And within a couple of holes, the girl pulled herself together and finished really, really well for the day. I mean, compared to where she had started. And she ran into that girl in college golf, and that girl brought that back and said, I remember that day. And she said thank you and gave her a hug. And character's everything.
Mm-hmm.
Your words, everything. And just remember that. It goes back to what I said early on. Look at your actions,
Mm-hmm.
and look around you. And are you impacting people negatively? And if you are, hit the pause button.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that story, man. That's powerful stuff. And kudos to you and your wife for raising two, which sound very grounded, well-rounded people in society, and they're going to make great husbands, wives, employees, leaders one day, and maybe they already are. That's what's great about those. And you paraphrased one of my favorite quotes, and I was talking about that earlier today to one of my clients I'm working with. Is like, be that Maya Angelou. That's called Maya Angelou moments. Not what you said, why you said it, but how you make people feel. If you're making your kids or your customer or your friend think about what you did or how you did it, like, that's how you become uncommon. And that's how you create uncommon relationships, uncommon situations by creating those things. So I love that you said that.
And I do want to add, Casey, just really quick. In as much as I'd love to take a lot of credit, or even 50% of the credit of who my kids are, my wife is an amazing person and has probably imparted more of that than I have, and has sacrificed far more. So I got to give her the lion's share of the credit. I mean, to be a working mom, very successful, and instill that into our kids, that's huge. So I got to give her a lot more credit than me.
What's your wife's name?
Tammy.
Shout out to Tammy. Tammy, bringing the heat and fire at the end of the episode here. I love it. Okay, we're gonna go lightning round.
Lightning round it is.
This is when I just go random. This is Uncle Rico stuff, where you're going to go inside the mind of a college quarterback who has a screw loose, and your job just to answer quickly when these questions that come to the top of my mind.
Okay.
True or false? You have a 12 handicap.
False. Not anymore.
Okay. True or false? Your daughter gives you 10 strokes aside to make it competitive.
False. It's 7 aside. She gives me. She won't give me strokes on par threes.
Okay. Tell me the last book you read.
The last business book was yours.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that book, and I passed it on to a couple of colleagues. I'm currently reading Anatomy of Greatness by Brandel Chambly.
Brandel Chambly?
Yep. He's a golfer. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Anatomy of Greatness. Okay, cool. I'll write that down. I love golf books. If I was to go into your phone right now and play a song that was last played, what would it be?
It would be a Riley Green song. Could be one of probably three or four. "Bury Me in Dixie," "Man Like Me," uh, something like that. It'll be a country music song.
Okay. If you were to book a vacation right now, where are you going?
To the long lost land that I haven't been the last few years, which is Grand Cayman. We go every year, and it's been shut down for COVID. I have missed that. That is my Graceland.
Okay. If I was to come to your house tonight for dinner, what are you making me?
You, couple ex-football players, we're throwing some steaks on the grill. That's just how it's going to be, and potatoes in the oven.
Sweet. I like it. If there was to be a movie about your life, what would be the title and who would star you?
Wow, that's a heck of a question. A Man Like Me, I think maybe is would be the title.
I like that.
And I think, look, I would love a Matthew McConaughey to play me.
All right.
That's it. Not that I look anything like that guy.
Listener, he does too. He looks a spitting image to Matthew McConaughey. I'm not letting him disagree otherwise. And last question: tell me 2 words to describe your wife.
Amazing and accountable.
The double A. I love it. Lightning round's over. Craig, it's been an honor having you on the Quarterback Dadcast. As always, I want to thank our sponsors, Catch Sitka Seafoods. If you are a seafood fan, I ask you kindly to visit catchsitkaseafoods.com. They will ship you fish directly from the seas of Sitka. The right near Sitka, by the way, and fresh dock to door. I love sharing the story because my daughter does not even like fish, and she loves their salmon, their smoked salmon. I love their white fish. And then lastly, people in the Northwest, if you're up in the state of Washington, you're looking for a home built like no one else does, please visit Acme Homes. My college teammate, the Bob Cumming, has been in business there for years, does a heck of a job. They got 3 amazing properties, so I would encourage you to check them out, acmehomeswa.com. But without further ado, Craig, it's been an honor having you on. I can't wait to share a story with everybody and keep inspiring many of us, because I got inspired just from spending time with you today.
Thank you, my friend. It has been my honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
Cool.